and without sequelae. So, what is the future trend? We know that the etiology of Kawasaki disease is still not clear, and it is thought to be some environmental trigger in genetically predisposed individual. Also, we see heterogeneity. Some patient may have severe form of Kawasaki disease, some may not have. Some may develop coronary artery aneurysms and other may not. So if we think logically, ideally there should not be some blanket cover for treatment like 2 gram per kg of IVIG in every patient. It should be some targeted therapy based on the clinical and disease profile of the patient. This is one study by Suzuki et al. It is a retrospective analysis in Japan in which they compared 2 gram per kg IVIG single dose with 1 gram per kg IVIG in children more than 25 kg. And they found no significant difference in outcomes in terms of coronary artery aneurysms, IVIG resistance, or adverse effect. This is another multi-center open-label trial in China in which they studied 404 children and they divided these children into 3 groups. Group A received 2 gram per kg single dose, Group B received 1 gram per kg for 2 consecutive days, and Group C 1 gram per kg once, and all these 3 groups received aspirin 30 mg per kg per day. And they found no significant difference in outcomes of defervescence at 6, 12, 24, and 36 hours, and there was no difference in the incidence of coronary artery aneurysms in all these 3 groups. Then another study was Matsura et al. In Japan, in which they studied 277 patients, and they divided these children into 3 groups based on Kobayashi score and less high risk score. High risk score have Kobayashi score more than 5 points, and they received 2 gram per kg of IVIG single dose with prednisolone. And moderate risk group with Kobayashi score of less than 5 and less high risk score more than or equal to 2 points received 2 gram per kg IVIG, and third group, which is low risk group, with Kobayashi score and less high risk score less than 2, received 1 gram per kg IVIG. And there was no significant difference between the groups regarding treatment response to coronary artery aneurysms. And they concluded that stratified therapies for patients with KD based on the scoring system may be useful. Aspirin is the second drug used in KD, and this study I have shown earlier. It was Kato et al. Who showed effectiveness of aspirin in reducing the incidence of coronary artery aneurysms. So this was a study by Yokoyama et al. Published in 1980. They compared effectiveness of moderate dose, that is 30 mg per kg per day, to the high dose, and showed that the moderate dose is as effective as high dose in treating KD patients. Then this is a meta-analysis published in 1995. They had 6 groups. First is the group of patients who received only aspirin. Second group, low IVIG with aspirin. Then third, high IVIG with aspirin. Single IVIG with aspirin, high IVIG and low aspirin, and so. And they found that the incidence of coronary artery aneurysms both at 30 and 60 days after was significantly lower in low IVIG than in aspirin, which means low IVIG was more effective than aspirin alone, then high IVIG than in low IVIG group, which means high IVIG is more effective than IVIG, low IVIG. And there was no statistically significant difference in the incidence of coronary artery aneurysms in high IVIG, low aspirin, and high IVIG, high aspirin group, which means there is hardly any difference in the effectiveness of aspirin in low dose or high dose when used with IVIG. This is a study from China on nearly 1,000 children in which they compared no or low dose with moderate dose and found that moderate dose aspirin demonstrated no benefit with regards to anti-inflammatory effects, and the aspirin dose had no relationship with the formation of coronary artery lesions. This is a systematic review published in 2024. Again, they compared no or low dose versus high dose aspirin, and they found that there is no significant difference in no or low dose aspirin versus high dose aspirin in the incidence of coronary artery aneurysms, IVIG resistance, fever duration, and overall hospital stay length. So aspirin we use for its anti-inflammatory and antiplatelet effect. Initially we give 30 to 50 mg per kg per day, 6 hourly till child is febrile for 2 days, and then we shift him on to 3 to 5 mg per kg per day aspirin, and we continue it till 6 weeks, and if echo is normal at 6 weeks, we stop it there. So what AHA says about use of aspirin in Kawasaki disease, this is again 2024 update. As per it, aspirin is used in moderate or high dose until the patient is febrile for 48 to 72 hours. Then low dose aspirin after defervescence and continue it till 6 to 8 weeks after onset of illness. And there is increasing evidence that medium or high dose aspirin in acute phase is likely not associated with improved coronary artery outcome. And there are several retrospective cohort studies which have shown no difference in coronary artery aneurysm rate between patients who were treated with moderate as compared to high dose aspirin. So this is ongoing multi-center prospective randomized trial in China with a sample size of 1,346 participants, and they are comparing IVIG 2 gram per kg plus moderate dose aspirin, that is 30 to 50 milligram per kg per day, to IVIG plus low dose aspirin, that is 3 to 5 mg per kg per day, and the results are still awaited. So these are the other drugs used in long-term prophylaxis, and these have been covered in previous talks. And for antiplatelet effects, there is a recommendation for using dual therapy in medium and large aneurysm. For dual therapy, in addition to aspirin, we use dipyridamole and clopidogrel. And in anticoagulation, we use heparin in younger children and warfarin in older children. And also the direct-acting oral anticoagulants have shown promising results. Statins for their anti-inflammatory, antioxidation, antiplatelet, antithrombotic, antilipid effects are used if the child has aneurysm, and beta blockers are used in case of child with large aneurysms. So to conclude, IVIG at 2 gram per kg remains the standard of care. Aspirin we use in moderate dose until the patient is febrile for 48 hours, then we use low dose aspirin. There is increasing evidence that medium or high dose aspirin in the acute phase is likely not associated with improved outcome, and targeted therapy based on clinical disease and genetical profile is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a Mr. talk. And you have covered regarding the what are this in future regarding the role of IVIG and aspirin and how dosing and all these things also. So we will take questions after Dr. Abhay's talk also, because he will be speaking on the treatment of AD when there is an IVIG refractoriness. So Dr. Abhay Sirpuri is a pediatric rheumatologist at New Clinic Children's Hospital in Jaipur, and he is practicing pediatric rheumatologist for the last 5 years.
Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Surajit Singh sir and Dr. Rakesh for inviting me for the talk. Yesterday I was just speaking to Deepti ma'am regarding the fact that I was here for a few months in 2015 when I was planning to start pediatric. I was thinking about doing pediatric rheumatology, and it is a bit nostalgic that I came back 10 years later for a Kawasaki conference to the same center. So I'm grateful to the organizers for this opportunity. As Dr. Sandesh mentioned, the low-risk category for management of Kawasaki, I know most of it is, some of it is repetition and overlap. I also got to know that the next speaker is also speaking about primary intensification, Dr. Aparna, so we'll cut short on that part and we'll skip on those slides. But what we want to know is who is at high risk of coronary aneurysms and IVIG resistance. So I'll give you 2 case scenarios, and it is quite obvious if you see the case scenario 2 and 1. So looking at scenario 1 is an infant male with fever for 10 days, irritability, basically edema of hands and feet, unresponsive to antibiotics, incomplete disease, and high WBC count, neutrophilic leukocytosis, high ESR, high CRP, with 6 to 7 pus cells, low sodium, blood and urine cultures negative, and echo showing a positive Z score of 4.6 LAD. And if you look at the case scenario 2, which is the more commonly seen case scenario across pediatricians, this is a case of a classical Kawasaki disease with a normal echo Z score. So it is not too difficult in such a story to say that this case scenario 1 is the one at a higher risk. So what are the red flags in case scenario 1? So it would be the age and sex of the child, incomplete Kawasaki disease, delay in diagnosis, coronary artery at presentation, aneurysms, and high Kobayashi score. So all of these actually are red flags in scenario 1, and that often leads to a delay in diagnosis and hence the complications. So if we simplify these steps, if it is low risk, we would treat KD as discussed by Dr. Guleria sir. And what is more important now is how to identify who are the children at high risk. Then comes the need for primary intensification, and then what happens if the child does not respond to the IVIG is when we call it resistant disease. On an average, 10 to 20% of them may not respond, but there's different data across different studies, which this study mentions about 7.5 to 26% of resistance, and what are the treatment options. That is what we will be trying to discuss. Now, we all know that there are some risk scores from the Japanese population, and the components, the commonly used one is the Kobayashi score, but the other scores are called as the IGAMI and the Sano score. What are the components of these scoring? From CRP, age, days of illness at Kawasaki disease diagnosis, AST, sodium, percentage of neutrophils, and platelet count is what constitutes Kobayashi score. If you look at the center table here, sodium of less than 133, a day at illness of treatment less than 4 days, AST of more than 100, more than 80% neutrophils, and a high CRP, infant less than 1 year of age, and a low platelet count is what constitutes a high Kobayashi score. Normally we say 4 or more or 5 or more are the children who are at a higher risk of IVIG resistance. So this study was published in 2006. There is some problem with my font, so I'll apologize for that. This study was from 2006, in which occurrence of IVIG non-response obviously keeps increasing as the risk score of Kobayashi and the components keep increasing. This graph shows about the coronary artery abnormalities that also keep increasing as the high risk children become more high risk and a score of more than 5. But of course, this was studied in the Japanese population. So what data do we have on other ethnicities? So in 2020, there was a KAWANET study, which was the French cohort. And what variables did they look at? That was the ALT value, hepatomegaly, lymphopenia, and the time to treatment. So this is in the non-Asian children, but a French cohort. Sun score, which Dr. Guleria also mentioned, actually is the North American cohort, in which they have looked at components such as age less than 6 months, Asian race, coronary artery Z scores more than 2 on the initial echo, and a high CRP. And a score of 3 or more is predictive of a coronary artery aneurysm. So I was speaking to Dr. Priyankar Pal sir from Calcutta, and they had published this study in 2022. And they have proposed an Indian scoring system for a high risk of Kawasaki. Basically, we'll realize that there are so many components of different scoring system across different ethnicities, but what is most important is that there is a commonality between them, and we just have to identify who are the children at high risk, and those need to be intensified for treatment. So if we look at the scoring proposed by the Calcutta team, the training data set contained of 70 patients, and out of which 24 were IVIG resistant, and the testing data set for the training data set had 45 patients, and the IVIG resistance was in around 15% of them. So basically it's very similar to Kobayashi score. What the changes are highlighted in red on the left hand side is the proposed score, and on the right hand side is the original score. Sorry for the font issues. Left is the proposed score. So age less than 21 months, CRP more than 17, and a platelet less than 6 lakhs. So how did these numbers come? This is of course by the statistics, and what it has led to is basically an increased sensitivity. So if we see the original score, the sensitivity was 0.66, and in the new score, proposed score, it can go up to 0.8. But there are some limitations, of course, of a new proposed scoring system. One is that it does not take into consideration about the progressive coronary arteries which may progress after the IVIG infusion. This is mainly talking about IVIG resistance. Second is this is a single center study, so we need more centers to be involved across India to be able to actually say that this is actually the sensitivity is actually true for across populations in India. And this was the latest study in 2025, in which they have looked at 14 cohort studies and looked at 6 variables. So male sex, age less than 12 months, rash, cervical lymphadenopathy, high neutrophil count and a low platelet count. And higher the score, the greater the possibility of additional treatment. This study is from China, but published in the Italian Journal of Pediatrics. And the proportion of resistance in this study was ranging between 5 to 24%. So that's what I was saying. So basically we have to look at some of the components. The common components, there are quite a lot of them. Looking at the infant or not, and the bloods we've talked about, high or low platelets, high CRP, male sex, cervical lymph nodes, late administration or early administration of IVIG, if the child was already IVIG resistant, delay in diagnosis, MAS or KD shock syndrome, and increased baseline coronary Z score. So these are some of the factors which will lead to which will either need primary intensification or may lead to resistance also. So this was a paper published in 2024 by the PGI team, Dr. Burman, and it really beautifully gives you a timeline of events. That in 1979 was when the famous study of Kato et al. Was published, after which the favor moved away from steroids because of the thought that steroids actually harms the children with Kawasaki disease. And after the use of IVIG, as Dr. Sandesh has nicely pointed out, we moved towards IVIG and aspirin, and over time, we realized the risk factors which led to more primary intensification with different options for treatment. I think Dr. Abarna will be covering those, so I'll skip those parts. So, and then since use of IVIG, there were multiple studies on steroids and the benefit of steroids in Kawasaki. Yesterday, Dr. Tapas sir has also beautifully summarized all the studies. It meant that single pulse steroid is not effective, but you can either use 3 pulse steroids or you can use IV methylpredate at 2 mg per kg per day. They also looked at the cytokine levels in IVIG plus steroids and without steroids, and all these were in favor of steroids. Till there's of course a RAISE study, which is a landmark trial published in the Lancet in 2012, which talks about the benefit of coronary aneurysms in IVIG plus steroids. These are more recent papers in initial corticosteroid treatment in Kawasaki, and one of the studies published this month in March 25 from Japan also talks about, can we reduce the steroids earlier? Normally we give it for a period of 2 to 3 weeks. In this study published, they tried to reduce the steroids in a 1 week span. But of course we need bigger studies. This was the Cochrane data, which was also discussed by Dr. Tapas Subbi sir yesterday. And basically, again, in short, it talks about the fact that we can use steroids as primary intensification. And I'll skip this part. These are more recent studies about intensification. I think I'll skip the part because the next talk is also on the intensification part. This is one of the ongoing trials in UK called the KD-CAP study. This is by the Great Ormond Street Hospital team, in which they are comparing IVIG plus steroids and aspirin versus without steroids. They do not have the results yet, but they'll be out very soon. So how do we define IVIG resistance? So some of the points I've discussed actually is regarding steroids and IVIG. There's a lot of data to use that in primary intensification, but the definition of resistance also keeps changing across different guidelines. So if we see, it basically ranges from 24 to 48 hours after the completion of first IVIG dose. So the American Heart Association and the 2021 ACR Foundation guidelines say that persistence or recrudescence of fever after 36 hours of completion of IVIG should be defined as resistance. The SHARE guidelines 2019 from Europe also say that it should be defined after 48 hours of receiving IVIG. In Japanese guidelines, there's responsiveness is between 24 to 36 hours. In my personal practice, I follow 36 hours. I do not know if anyone else is following 24 hours as cutoff. Dr. Rakesh, are you following 24 hours or is it 36 hours or is it not defined? So it varies across different centers. We can discuss it at the end of the talk. So what is the evidence regarding other treatment options? We've spoken about steroids, but let's see what are the other options. For example, TNFi, infliximab, etanercept, cyclosporin, anakinra, and tocilizumab. Regarding infliximab, there was a trial called as the KidCare trial in 2021, in which they have compared infliximab versus the second IVIG for children who are resistant to Kawasaki disease. And in the infliximab group, there were fewer days of fever, less need of additional therapy, less severe anemia, and fewer severe adverse effects. But there was no obvious difference between the resolution of lab markers and the coronary artery outcomes. In the IVIG group, the prolonged hospitalization was attributed to the fact that the IVIG will be given over a longer duration. Primary intensification part with infliximab was also published in 2023, in which they have used a higher dose. Between 5 and 10, we normally suppose we can use infliximab, and there was intensification with inflix was associated with greater likelihood of regression within 2 months compared with IVIG alone. This was another recent study on infliximab for resistant Kawasaki disease. Infliximab is an effective, safe treatment for children with refractory Kawasaki, but adds limited efficacy to IVIG for the initial treatment of Kawasaki disease. There's also a lot of studies on the role of IL-1 expression in the children with aggressive Kawasaki disease or severe Kawasaki disease or coronary aneurysms. So they have also done a trial in France called as the Kawa-Kindra trial, in which they've looked at anakinra role for resistant Kawasaki disease. So the doses were between 2 and 6, an average of 4 mg per kg per day of anakinra. And this was given for a duration of 14 days. They've studied this on 16 patients. It does have some role. It was well tolerated, but we do not know for sure that does it help in reducing the coronary artery dilatation. This particular study say that it may have some efficacy in reducing fever and markers of systemic inflammation and coronary dilatation in refractory cases. Data on tocilizumab in resistant Kawasaki disease comes from China. There was this study in which they have included 5 patients only, but they have tried tocilizumab in cases of high Kobayashi score, and in those patients in whom IVIG and steroids were ineffective. So tocilizumab effectively controls inflammation and improves coronary outcome, but because it had only 5 patients, we still need more studies to confirm this. Cyclosporin is a well-used drug for patients with Kawasaki disease, and the KAIKA trial was published, and they have seen, this is from Japan, between 2014 to 2016, including 22 hospitals, and basically combining therapy with IVIG and cyclosporin was safe and effective with a favorable outcome. There were more studies in 2023 January which showed similar clinical outcomes regarding the risk of aneurysm IVIG resistance in those children with IVIG and cyclosporin. So what do the current guidelines say? In Japanese, the guidelines talk about IVIG plus prednisolone or IVIG plus cyclosporin. The American Heart Association talks about steroids with infliximab or etanercept. The SHARE guidelines from Europe talk about steroids in severe cases or a high Kobayashi score. The ACR guidelines talk about the SUN score, in which the age of less than 6 months or a baseline Z score high, that is when they can use steroids plus IVIG or IVIG with other immunomodulators. These are some of the features when they have described about using steroids in patients with severe Kawasaki disease. Basically, when they have high Kobayashi score, features of HLH, features of shock, less than the age of 1, what they have given for the steroid regimen are 2 regimens. One is methylpred 0.8 mg per kg BD, and second is a pulse steroid 10 to 30 mg per kg per day. And the other options are usually used for resistant disease. So the American Heart Association talks about IVIG and aspirin for initial treatment. For intensification, like we discussed, the options are usually around steroids and TNF blockers. And for resistant disease, we can use cyclosporin, anakinra, second dose of IVIG, or cyclophosphamide. This was published in 2022 by Surjit Singh sir and the Indian Academy of Pediatrics Standard Treatment Guidelines. And this also talks about the fact that we can go beyond IVIG. We can use oral prednisolone 2 mg per kg and until afebrile or CRP normalized, or you can see all the different options, IV methylpred or infliximab or cyclosporin or anakinra for resistant diseases. And this is a paper recently published, which I showed with the timeline initially, which talks about the intensification and the treatment options we have. And basically, these are all the high-risk children we discussed, and in those cases you would intensify, and there are options of again IVIG, steroids, TNF blockers and cyclosporin, and in some children we may need more options together. So to conclude my talk, basically we have to identify who are the children at high risk. I'm sure we've already discussed some of these in the last few days, but we have to identify who are the high risk of IVIG resistance and coronary artery abnormalities, we have to think early of primary intensification, as across the last few days we have seen multiple studies of the long-term sequelae of the coronary arteries if not picked up on time. And of course, we have looked at the different treatment options for resistant disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, for nice talk. So basically, both talks regarding the standard treatment and treatment for IVH effectiveness is open for comments and questions. And before that, I just comment that I would ask that IVIG induced hemolysis during the acute phase of the treatment, because that is a very big concern, especially reported in the West Americans as reported. And second is regarding the dose of aspirin, so which is like again something which is evolving, and possibly now more and more people are started using antiplatelet dose during the febrile during the acute phase only. So, Dr. Sandesh.
As per literature, the incidence of hemolysis in KD when used IVIG is 0.6 to 16%. And there are various factors on which it depends. Another factor is brand of IVIG. Generally acceptable antibody titer against RBC is 1 to 64. And if we use multiple doses of IVIG, higher doses of IVIG, the risk of hemolysis is low. And other factors I have highlighted are blood group, then obesity is another factor. Regarding use of aspirin in Kawasaki disease, as per literature, there is no additional benefit of using high dose or moderate dose. When we use, and there is ongoing in which they are comparing low dose with high dose, the results are still. Basically, I think practice based.
Second question which Dr. Abhay has also is the definition of IVIG. In a clinical bedside, when we are seeing a patient, it's difficult to put a definition that 6 hours or 48 hours, because fever can be because of several reasons, and we have to rule out possibly. And these definitions are possibly just you can categorize the patients as IVIG. Again, like now, how people are using this, and more so like intensification, which Avarna will be talking about. Definition of IVIG resistance would be again this would be a blurring, because you would intensify, and whether you would call as an IVIG or refractory disease or not, that is again. Treat refractoriness or resistance in your 36, which is AHA.
Actually, this definition of resistance does not only consider the persistence of 6 hours. Even worsening aneurysm post IVIG can also be considered as. But nowadays the concept because of the intensification.
So in Dr. Paul Brogan, it actually always talks about the fact that there is no fever, the CRP normalizes to negative, and the coronary is stable. We have to keep intensifying, otherwise like it is not just the fever, we have to look at the whole picture.
So that's what the problem with, if you just follow strictly the definition, and you would over treating of this.
As far as our center is concerned, we have been using 3 to 5 mg per kg per day of aspirin in all KD right from the onset for the past couple of years at least.